That's city property!
So I'm a taxpayer.
Eyes, lungs, pancreas, so many.
I'll just use this pipe to... Uh-oh. You're no pipe.
Jarvis, you there?
At your service, sir.
Gauge heads-up display.
Check.
Four-door preferences from home interface.
Hot pink wizard hats or knee-high striped stockings might not seem like something you'd see an X-Men wearing, but it might surprise you what is hiding in their closets. Changeling, I've talked about this mutant a few times. He is the telepathic shifter that pretended to be Professor X, so Professor X could go underground to prepare for an alien invasion, had an identity crisis, decided to be a good guy after getting a cancer diagnosis, zombie version of him shapeshifted into Elvis to help out She-Hulk in a car chase. Hope that's all ringing a bell. So yeah, normally we talk about his powers, his life story, but today we are talking about his original outfit because what is he wearing? Blue morph suit base, which is fun because the alternate universe version of him is named Morph. Honestly, the body of it all is fine. It's the helmet. What is that? Who made that? Changeling can change the appearance of his costume at will, and that's what he picked. I have tried to find the reason he wears this helmet, but the truth is the character isn't that popular, so there really isn't much. I did find one hilarious description online. The most interesting thing about you is that ludicrous purple turnip of a hat. Sums it up, methinks. It must have something to do with the fact that he has telepathic powers, but I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what it has to do with that. Sound off in the comments down below if you know what is going on with the purple turnip. Again, with the headpieces for this X-Men, Feral sporting some sky-high hair, or fur. Feral is her name. Love that choice. She's completely feral. I don't know how to feel about her hair, fur, though. It's so pointy and so high. Somehow she is outdoing the original Wolverine look. Her actual clothing follows a similar style to her hair, having very pointy and high shoulders. I feel like she is in a 80s rock band and has yet to reveal that fact. Feral is like an animal. She has sharp claws and teeth. Her mutation makes her very fast and she has heightened senses. She also has a healing factor, of course, and a tail. The tail is very long and very strong. She can support herself with just the tail should she need to. Her most interesting ability, in my opinion, would have to be intangibility. She gained this ability during her ghost era. Yes, she did die, like most Marvel characters. As a ghost, she could easily pass through things. I showed a picture of Feral to my roommate. First words out of her mouth: what would that look like in 3D? She has a point. How big is the hair in real life? Ava Dara, or Warbird, is a soldier for the Shi'ar Empire. That means she gets soldier armor because she goes into battle a lot. She is in the army. Not that I really know what going into battle is like, but I watch TV, I read, and you generally want to protect soft parts and major organs in your chest area. Tell me why her entire middle section is completely exposed in a big cross. Nothing there that we can see. Hopefully there's like an invisible shield type of situation she put there to show off, but I really don't think so. Is it a show of power? I'm exposing everything because you will never get close kind of thing? It's poor design in my opinion. Fun design, she looks great, but it's not proper battle armor. The rest of the armor is fine. Her legs, her arm, and her head are good. It's just the heart and major organs that are out. Warbird is a strong fighter, expert markswoman, and very well trained in hand-to-hand combat. Plus she has an energy sword, so she is equipped to brawl when she needs to. The Cyclops outfit that debuted right after Avengers X-Men in 2012 was not a favorite in comparison to other Cyclops fits. No, it didn't measure up, but it didn't look completely awful, but it was kind of impractical. There are already so many things you just have to ignore in the Marvel Universe, or you just kind of have to take it at face value, or else you'll find no enjoyment here. But this outfit just makes no sense for the character. So usually Cyclops wears a visor to help prevent random like optic blasts. The good thing about the visor is that it makes sense. If he needs to remove it, he can do so easily. It makes sense that something could be built into the visor to prevent the random optic blasts. So when the new fit dropped in 2012, there were a lot of questions. The suit itself is forgettable but fine, just a red suit with lines on it. It's the head section that is weird, again with the helmets and heads and masks. So instead of a visor, he just has an X. X across the eyes. Not sure what the X is made of, presumably fabric, but then what fabric is going to prevent optic blasts? Maybe it's made of a hard material to prevent optic blasts. Then if he needed to remove it, would he just need to take off his entire hood? Questions everywhere. This one loses points simply for being unrealistic to the universe, which is hard to achieve. Magneto has had a number of outfits over the year, and I have put this one in the middle because I can't decide if I hate it. In 2021, Marvel released a bunch of character designs for the Hellfire Gala. It was the Met Gala for mutants basically, so everyone is turning up in exaggerated versions of their usual outfits or something representing their powers. Some people hit it out of the park. Emma Frost, Colossus, Sunfire are some of my personal favorites. Magneto's is giving. We can't deny that he put his all into his outfit. He's like an Elton John steampunk Magneto. There are aspects I really like. His gold cane is his helmet, and the suit is fun. It has lots of intricate designs and a rose pinned to the collar. Most of my problem, my side eye, is directed at the top hat. I don't think I've seen someone wear a top hat well since like 1900 or a magician. Yeah, I just can't decide if he looks majestic or too over the top. Let me know what you think. Nightcrawler slays right now. He's got a good look going for him. His look in the 90s Excalibur era, not a fan favorite, and it's not hard to see why. Nightcrawler now is like this cool guy. Sure, can his red neck cape be drawn a little extreme? Yes, but he makes it look cool. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for his 90s choice of fashion. Lots of characters got bold redesigns in the 90s, some worked, some didn't. In Nightcrawler's case, they gave him a goatee and overall made him a pirate. He looks like a pirate. Give him the hat, that's a pirate. He has a little gold earring, that's not that bad. I feel like they could bring that back no problem. His belt is weird though. It looks like it might actually be undergarments. I don't know. The red V that we are used to seeing on the character, but made out of this like loose piece of fabric. It looks like he got into an accident in the sheets section of Bed Bath & Beyond. Generally, fans agree that this redesign was a miss and are glad he has a different fit now. Wolverine's debut costume, the one that was basically the yellow and blue standard but had little whiskers, that one surprisingly isn't the worst thing Wolverine has worn. Maybe the worst thing designed for him, but he has served worse. In X-Men 107, Wolverine is fighting the Shi'ar Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard wears these outfits that are great for them, sure, but not so great for Wolverine. They're like these brown skin suits with a dark brown stripe up the middle and a belt made out of bones. Sounds like it should slay, right? The thing is, when Wolverine is drawn far away, it looks like he is wearing nothing but a thick ribbon. Physics, we don't know her. He's not, of course. The reason he had to wear the suit in the first place was because he got burned up in the fight and he needed something to wear that wasn't fabric shreds. An Imperial Guard was nearby and Wolverine took him out and wore his clothes. Professor X has sported some looks over the years. This one has got a touch of whimsy, a little bit of magic, and one man looking pretty in pink. Uncanny X-Men 153 gave us the gift of pink wizard Professor X. Unexpected turn for him, of course, but he didn't actually wear it. This issue of Uncanny X-Men featured the X-Men cleaning up after an attack, and Colossus's younger sister was scared to sleep because of the attack. So Kitty tells her a story to help her sleep. That story was Kitty's fairy tale. It featured Kitty and Colossus as pirates, Cyclops and Jean Grey as the prince and princess, Storm as the genie, Nightcrawler as a bamf, Wolverine as an unnamed meanie, and Professor X as the wizard. Professor X as the wizard was a moment. The comic was a little racially insensitive, but not the worst I've seen from Marvel, but also like not amazing. So Pink Professor is sitting on a magic carpet and he's got this hot pink robe covered in white stars and moons. He has a true wizard hat on his head with a little gem right in the middle and a very long mustache. Everyone across the board is sporting slightly goofy looks. This one was just the most shocking to me. So Rogue and the color green are best friends. She looks great in green, but once they made her green, like Shrek green, why? This was in Uncanny X-Men 190 and 191. This story was about that time that New York was transported back to the Middle Ages because a wizard couldn't get tickets to a Renaissance fair. I'm kidding. Kulan Gath is just weird. He made it so everyone in NYC acted like and believed they were in the Middle Ages and dressed like it was the Middle Ages, except Spider-Man. Not about him though. This is about what they did to Rogue. Redheads in green is a moment, you know, with the color wheel, backed science, and everything. So when Rogue wears green, she looks great. When she is green, I don't know. Shrek was not out when this comic was released, but Rogue is Shrek here. She doesn't look awful, but she's looked better. She also just wears a tunic and a long cape. She wasn't always green. In certain panels, she has her regular skin tone, so I'm not sure what's going on. It's kind of funny because at the start of the comic, there is a panel that showcases all the heroes affected by the spell. In it, you can see Storm drawn like a goddess, flattering angles overall, and then Rogue is beside her looking so angry and and square? What did they do to my girl? Uncanny X-Men 149 and Kitty Pryde, match made not in heaven. It is sweet how the costume from this issue came to be. Kitty is young, she wants to express herself, right? So she decided that the X-Men costume given to her was positively antique. So she decided to make herself a new one. This comic came out in the 80s, so I think you can guess how this teenage girl designed an 80s superhero costume and how it turned out. Lots of colors that don't go together and some stars. She also added some rollerblades to the mix, a nod to Dazzler, who Kitty is a fan of. They are a fun touch. Now instead of the flare coming from her ability to walk through walls, she can rollerblade through them. She's got these purple, white, and blue high sock stocking things, and I think a gold base suit. On top of that, she's wearing green shorts, a purple X-Men belt, orange gloves, purple mask, and a red tank top with blue lightning strikes on it. The gloves also have blue stars on them. I was not a teen girl in the 80s personally, so I'm not sure if this was like the dream fit. If you were a teen girl in the 80s, please sound off in the comments. Let me know if you would wear this to the roller rink.
You know, a lot of suits of armor do all these crazy cool things, like being actually alive, or adaptations, or traversing the vacuum of space, but not for our first suit of the day, the Muramasa armor. Essentially, it had one main benefit, but despite that, it's probably the coolest armor I have ever seen. In the all-new Wolverine series, X-23 gets her hands on this special suit of armor called the Muramasa armor. The word Muramasa may be familiar to you if you are a fan of Wolverine comics. The Muramasa blade was forged by the legendary swordsmith Muramasa by using a piece of Wolverine's own soul. It's the second blade made by Muramasa, and it's extremely durable and capable of cutting through substances on the molecular level, even adamantium. More than that though, the sword is also capable of greatly reducing the efficiency of a superhumanly fast healing rate, meaning that the sword is the only thing on Earth that can truly end the life of Wolverine or others like him. Well, this armor was made for Laura Kinney in order to protect from the broken Muramasa blade fragments that were being used against her. But other than its absolutely amazing look, the coolest thing about this armor is that it's made with soul fragments of Wolverine, Gabby, and Daken. This thing basically became a Wolverine family heirloom. Now while the Muramasa armor is just absolutely awesome, this next suit is just straight up nonsensical, but that is why we love it. Tony Stark's virtual armor, or the Model 68, is probably the most unique of all of Iron Man's armors. The virtual suit first debuted in Iron Man 2020, Volume 2, Number 5, when Tony Stark had his consciousness pulled out of his body to save his life, and it resulted in the virtual armor, which was made from the resources of the quote 13th floor, which is basically a virtual reality built of solid light. Now just to preface, I never said any of this had to make sense. The virtual armor, being virtual and made of solid light, could allow Tony to create any tool that he could possibly think of. It augmented his strength, it somehow actually protects against weapons fire, and it's invisible by default, acting as almost a force field around Tony that no one can see unless he wants it to be so. What's really cool is how it can separate from Tony to form like a prison bubble around people, and the suit even somehow still allows Tony to fly, and it protects him from the vacuum of space. I have no idea how it works, you have no idea how it works, it's the most comic booky thing I've ever heard of, but let's be honest, it's kind of awesome despite that. But if we are going to talk about one of Iron Man's crazy armors, why not talk about one of Batman's crazy armors? Enter the Hellbat suit in Batman and Robin number 33 by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. The Hellbat is the Justice League's gift to Batman, which he dons to go to Apokolips, the homeworld of Darkseid, to try and recover Damian Wayne's body. Now this suit elevates Batman to be able to trade punches with Darkseid himself. It was forged by Superman inside of the sun and was made out of a shifting nanokinetic metallic material that could activate via voice commands. It allows Batman to fly, run at super speed, while also boosting up his strength and durability to ridiculous levels. It comes with adaptive camouflage, a unibeam style energy blast, and a shape-shifting cape that somehow literally turns into bats when it's ripped off, which is the most badass thing I have seen in a hot minute. Now obviously, with all the benefits it grants Batman, it has to have some kind of downside, or there's no reason that Bruce wouldn't just wear it all the time. That downside is that the Hellbat suit slowly completely drains Bruce Wayne's life force and would actually wipe him out for good if he wore it for too long. Luckily, he only needed it to rescue his son, which he achieved in spectacular fashion. He then rebuilt the armor and kept it on the moon just in case. And of all people, Lois Lane was the only other person to use it to face the Eradicator. But going from one of the coolest suits in comic books to one of my absolute least favorites. When Black Condor first popped up on the scene in DC Comics, his choice of garb was interesting. Richard Grey Jr. gained the power of flight from being exposed to a radioactive meteor, though he believed he had just developed flight naturally after being raised by a flock of condors. I am not joking. So clearly, there is a level of, how do you say, creativity here. Richard came back into society from his time with the Condors. He then took someone else's identity while also being a costumed hero, and I think his superhero costume perfectly exemplifies how utterly off the rocker this guy actually is. Richard took to wearing a cape that draped out under each arm, being attached to his wrists bracelets, giving the semblance of wings because fly. It kind of reminds me of Monica Rambeau's earlier costumes, only worse. Now I'm sure that his underarm cape wing things could probably have had some kind of effect on his flying, but the rest of the getup is a mystery as to why he chose it. Essentially, he wears a neck collar that connects to this big chunky belt with one piece of fabric in the front, and he accompanies that with some short shorts and some really ornate looking boots. And that's it. Thankfully though, later iterations of the character took their look in some much cooler and serious direction. Now in Marvel's Ultimate Universe, Valkyrie is an incredibly capable warrior and is probably one of the strongest members of the Ultimates, but she wasn't always that way. Initially, Barbara Norris was just a 19-year-old girl with no actual powers who was obsessed with superheroes, specifically Thor. She did have some martial arts skills though, and she used that skill as a member of the Ultimate Universe Defenders, who were really just wannabes. They went off pretending to be superheroes for clout, essentially until Loki gave them all real powers. She then joined the Ultimates, but all the while she was running around calling herself an Asgardian warrior, Valkyrie initially was pretty scantily clad for most of her appearances. I'm sure there are a group of fans who were all there for that, but for some of us, it just didn't make too much sense. It wasn't until later on, after working with the Ultimates for a little while longer and having some real training with real Asgardians, that she would begin to armor up to bring her more in keeping with someone who was engaging in incredibly intense armed combat on the daily. But for a good chunk of time, she was jumping into battle extremely unprepared. Maybe coming back from the afterlife taught her armor was useful, but on the plus side, I think the change in her armor over time actually kind of shows her character's growth from a young, kind of out of her depth hero into a powerful warrior. Now switching back to DC Comics here, the history of Catwoman's look is a long and honestly incredibly odd story. Over time, she would go through a number of looks until it eventually became a leather suit, which had a more practical Master Thief vibe, matched with a pair of cat eye goggles. And it became the character's most popular costume, with later redesigns all primarily retaining the key elements of that suit. But in the very beginning, Selina Kyle was just a woman in a green dress that was also a thief. That kind of checks out for the comics at the time, and it also felt kind of unique in my personal opinion, compared to all the zany villains that were around. She kept it rather low-key. All it took was one change to make that no longer the truth. Eventually, in 1940's Batman #3, Selina Kyle donned an orange costume with a cape with the super great addition of an absolutely terrifying full cat face mask. This was basically like a mascot's headpiece, but like a little bit smaller and tighter to her head, which I'm sure made it more practical, but for me, it's utter nightmare fuel. I don't know what it is about animal heads on human people bodies, but I am not here for it. Basically, she kept the dress that she started with, but now, get this, it was orange, with an incredibly high-standing collar, and it was combined with a huge reddish-orange cape. Tiny little blue heels were also there for added comfort, and she topped it all off with a terrifying full cat head piece. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. We're moving on. I promise I am not trying to make this a Bat family-centered video, but I think we can kind of all agree that the Bat family costumes go through so many different changes, from the terrifying early look of Catwoman to the terrifying in a different way look of Cassandra Kane's Batgirl. Cassandra Cain is the daughter of David Cain and Lady Shiva, two assassins who raised and trained Cassandra to become basically a perfect warrior. She became the new Batgirl in Batman No Man's Land, and her costume was such a drastic change compared to other Batgirls of the past. If I was walking the streets of Gotham and I saw someone dressed like this, I would just move, like to a different city, possibly a different country, maybe even a different continent. Going from the almost friendly seeming outfits of Barbara Gordon's Batgirl costume to this dark, brooding, leather-clad costume with basically no human facial features that walked right out of someone's nightmares, it's so fitting for her and her character. It's intimidating, it's intense, and if I was a Gotham City criminal who came face to face with this in the middle of the night, my life would flash before my eyes before Cassandra even laid her extremely capable fists on me. Now, when the X-Men were first created, their costumes were basically all just slight variations of the same basic look. Hank McCoy, when he first showed up, was a shorter, stocky guy with huge hands and feet. That was basically it. His original costume didn't even have gloves or boots, which helped him to stand out even more. Now, Hank was the bruiser on the team for sure, with his mutations being strength and agility. But while he may have been a somewhat odd-looking guy, he was still fairly human-looking. That is, until Amazing Adventures number 11 in 1972. Hank got a job at Roxxon, which is never going to go particularly well, what with them being incredibly shady. During his time with Roxxon, Hank developed a serum that acted as a catalyst for activating latent mutations for short periods of time. And then he drank it. The effects of this serum ended up making Hank grow gray fur, yes, gray, not blue. His muscles expanded even more, his ears became large and pointed, he got claws, and his canine teeth grew and became fangs. The serum further increased his superhuman agility, endurance, speed, and strength, as well as enhancing his senses, but it became the basis for how Hank McCoy would look going forward. It wasn't until Amazing Adventures 14 that he would become the blue, furry, awesome beast that we know and love thanks to Quasimodo, and he's been the same ever since. Now in for our runner-up spot, in the future timeline where Batman Beyond takes place, before Terry McGinnis came along, Bruce Wayne was well aware that his body was beginning to fail him, which meant that he needed to build a suit capable of making up for his aging body. After pouring his vast resources and knowledge into his creation, the Batman Beyond suit was born. After spending years and years fighting crime in Gotham, this suit is only one of a few bat suits that are actually bulletproof, but it can do way more than just deflect projectiles. The Beyond suit has allowed Terry McGinnis to walk through burning buildings, survive underwater for extended periods of time, and the suit is even resistant to radiation. It features neuromuscular amplification, which has been able to help Terry bend metal bars, lift giant metal I-beams, move large quantities of rubble, and massive light projectors. Random, but trust me. It's not all physical, but it's not all physical. While Terry had previously been able to hear through thick walls and glass, upgraded version of his suit takes advantage of a system that allows him to literally see straight through walls. This suit literally has a polygraph device in order to tell when villains are lying. The Batman Beyond suit features almost too many things like cameras, voice communicators, retractable claws and wings, an incredible stealth mode, and it's even got lasers, man. But the best part of the whole thing is just being able to look at it. What an icon. Okay, for our last point today, he may have had a mullet at the time, but Superman in a black costume? Come on. After the Man of Steel was resurrected in Superman Volume 2, number 81, after his death at the hands of Doomsday, he came back with an all-black costume with silver accents. I don't know about you guys, and I know a lot of people hate that mullet, but you put any hero in a sleek black version of their normal suit compared to their usual color schemes, and I am there for it. Spider-Man did it, and it was one of his most iconic looks. Superman did it, and lordy lord, he killed it. The costume even got a modern revamp in Zack Snyder's Justice League when Henry Cavill's Superman comes back to life from a very similar Doomsday defeat, and it looked even better that time. Sure, black-suited Superman may not have lasted too long, and sure, the red and blue is just way more iconic and symbolic of the character, this costume has a definitive place in my list of absolutely favorite superhero looks alongside black-suited Spider-Man. Sorry we didn't talk about it.
I was thinking about including Green Arrow on this list, but then I thought of something even better. Someone who has a getup that even Green Arrow's original Robin Hood look cannot hold a candle to. Get ready for Hawkeye in his purple pantless number, now complete with his fancy headband. Admittedly, this was a costume that Hawkeye donned upon his return to the circus, or at least a return to the circus, but still, my goodness, what a look. It feels like a bit of a play on Robin Hood, but of course in Hawkeye's classic purple and without any pants or tights for that matter. Just him in a very deep V-neck tunic here. Oh, and with purple riveted metal looking bracelets. It's honestly quite the look. Needless to say, it didn't last too long. Oh boy, this one isn't just wild because of the look of the outfit, it's wild because of the retcon that came along with it. How do I explain? Well, during New 52, Starfire basically lost her memories and ended up finding, kissing, and teaming up with Jason Todd's Red Hood and his team of outlaws. Although she and Jason were thankfully not made an item, she and Arsenal kind of were. How do you feel about Arsenal and Starfire together? Who do you ship Starfire with anyways? Or who do you ship Arsenal with? What is your favorite comic book ship in general? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, to go along with her very free love attitude here, Starfire sported a very tiny costume. Now granted, Starfire has been implied to be somewhat powered by the sun, or sometimes I think she's absorbed sun energy. It's not consistent, but it's been a thing here and there, and she's also no stranger to wearing something akin to a bathing suit in terms of her costume. She also comes from a world where, you know, this attire is more custom, she's more used to it, it's what she's comfortable in, which honestly is fine and makes sense for the character in most cases. But this took that idea of her being, you know, more scantily clad to an extreme, with her wearing something smaller even than a bikini, and of course with the bonus of her losing some of her agency in terms of how she dressed, since she was struggling with her memory at the time. So she wasn't entirely herself here, which, you know, makes this costume feel a little icky. I have to say, I never expected to see Havoc dressed this way. I think you know what I'm about to talk about because it's also one of my favorite looks for both Madeline Pryor and Alex Summers. Even though it's ridiculous, we're talking about the Goblin Prince. I think one of my favorite things about this weird getup is how tattered it looks on everyone. Like, what are people getting up to in this that they're so tattered? Is Limbo full of rough edges or protruding edges that you just like constantly are getting your costume hooked onto? I need to figure out what is happening here. But I have to say, honestly, I love it. That being said, I also think the iconic shininess of this black look is great, and that's how I've always seen it, as shiny and polished in my mind. But we have to also admit that yes, this costume is super ridiculous, and the fact that Havoc got a matching look to Maddie is super weird. It's super ridiculous for sure. But you know, hey, at least it's equality. At least Maddie's wearing it and so is Alex. They're wearing it together as a unit. Speaking of unconventional looks, next up we also have another daring black number. This one comes to us from DC Comics, and it is none other than Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Boy for some reason did not have anything that they were wearing that resembled space at this time, or anything cosmic. They instead were wearing a black kind of corset with a deep V-neck attached to booty shorts, black gloves, and black booties. It's just such an iconic and eye-popping look, honestly. Although I guess this was the 70s, so maybe this is what everyone was wearing back then? I don't know. I wasn't alive in the 70s, so if this was you and you were sporting this look and you were rocking it, please let me know, because honestly, I probably would wear this look today, and I think maybe this is a look we should bring back. What does Cosmic Boy even look like today? Oh, that's what he looks like. At least it's striking. The modern day look for Cosmic Boy just kinda looks boring to me. Maybe we should just bring back this look, actually. Just do that instead. The sad truth for our next point is that this is a character who's never really had a great look. Sadly, the look that he has now is one of the looks that he's had for honestly the longest time, and it's because it's the best of what I would say is kind of the worst of costumes. That's right, we're talking about Wonder Man here. Poor Wonder Man, poor Simon, the disrespect that we have shown him in terms of the costumes that we've dressed him in. It's just sad. He's such a cool character, and yet he usually has honestly such dumb looks. This is a particularly dumb one though. We're talking about the West Coast Avengers costume, the orange and blue number that he wore when he was on the West Coast Avengers. It's kind of got like a W on it that goes down into like the shape of an X sort of as well. There's like these big yellow pieces on the back. I don't know what's happening with this look, but I'll tell you what it is. It's not a good look. And needless to say, it was very short-lived, which is saying something about someone like Simon, who, like I said, is used to wearing some pretty bad costumes, honestly. Oh boy, this next look is very iconic because it's very different from anything that we would see this character wear. We're talking about Batman. Batman here. And I think if you know Batman's costume history, you maybe know what I'm about to say next. We're talking about the rainbow suits. Honestly, I love how colorful these are, but that's what makes them so weird and unique, is the fact that Batman is usually known for dressing in pretty dark colors, usually black, sometimes blue, sometimes a bit of bright yellow peppered in here or there, but not usually rainbow. We don't get a whole range of colors with Batman normally. That being said, this time we did, and even better, this wasn't just a change because Batman wanted to like try something new, or he thought, hey, this is super fashionable. This was a change that actually served a purpose in the comics. There's a reason for it. What was the purpose here? Distraction. That's right, this was a distraction tactic. Batman used this to protect his sidekick, his ally, the boy wonder, Robin. Honestly, I gotta say, I think it would work pretty well for me. I'm used to seeing Batman dressed in pretty dark colors, so if he just came out in like a bright orange suit, I would be like, wait, what is happening? Who is this guy? I don't know where to look. Is that Batman? Is he okay? I wouldn't even notice the boy wonder myself. This next point might honestly get me into some trouble, I know, with some of you in the comments. It usually gets me in trouble when I talk about it, but I'm willing to take that. I'll take the trouble, give it to me. I know this is a controversial point, but we're gonna talk about Sue Storm's fantastic cutout costume. Now, I do know that there was a reason behind this costume, so yes, it was to showcase the fact that Sue was kind of different at this time because she was being possessed by her alter ego, Malice. Malice is basically like Sue Storm unhinged. It's like Sue Storm if she just woke up and realized, you know what, maybe life isn't so good. Maybe my husband Reed is kind of a jerk. Maybe it's okay to be a woman and be mad. But also if she was just evil, because that's really what Malice is all about now. And also the fact that, you know, Malice is, sometimes she's like Sue's alter ego, sometimes she's like another entity that possesses her. This is an evil entity, and it's often presented as being, like I said, a sort of dark side of Sue Storm taking hold of her. And this costume change was meant to represent that change to Sue's psyche, which is obviously a lot more of an edgy look for Sue. This is not something we normally see her in. However, the fact that Malice is presented here as another entity, something that is both a part of Sue but is also very separate from her, that takes control of her, means that this costume change also happened with like a little lack of agency, I would say. In my opinion too, this is kind of a weird change because Malice is like an evil side of Sue that like always has to be erased if it ever shows up. It wasn't a part of herself that she just reconciles with, which is ultimately why I don't like this look for her. I just think the whole Malice thing is kind of weird, and the way they dealt with it is kind of weird. I don't mind the sexy element for Sue. I think Sue could be sexy. I just like her to be the one that says, you know what, I'm going to be sexy today. I'm okay and I choose to be sexy. Not this evil half of her that has to be eliminated, you know, Malice. For this next little number, we're going to the movies, specifically the Batman movie. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that look. We're gonna talk about the bat nipples. Can I say nipples? I think I can say nipples, so I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say nipples. This costume is just a lot, which is why it makes the cut. I don't think I need to say too much about it, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Nipples. Moving back over to Marvel, every time I revisit this look for Professor X, it gets more ridiculous for me. Every time I learn more about it, I think, why does this exist? Who is this for? Is it really for Charles? Is it really for Lilandra? We're talking about the Shi'ar exoskeleton, or as I like to call it, the Shi'ar exosuit, but that's not an official term. I don't know if anyone else uses that term, just FYI, but that's what I like to say. The Shi'ar exosuit is one that was gifted to Charles by Lilandra Naramani, his love. It is made by the Shi'ar and allows those who are unable to walk the ability to walk using telepathic energy. There is a downside though. The telepathic energy that is required to basically pilot this suit makes you exhausted, to the point that when Professor X joins his own X-Men in a fight against Magneto in Fatal Attractions, he literally needs Jean Grey to accompany him to even be able to walk with his X-Men in the exoskeleton. I'm sorry. But Charles, just leave the suit at home, my man. Don't wear the suit if it's going to limit you that much, especially if you're going up against Magneto. What were you thinking? Also, although I'm not sure if this comes up, it does look like it's made of some kind of metal. I don't think that's ever addressed, but I just mean, you know, get this man a glass wheelchair, get him a glass hover chair, get him anything else. Oddly enough, Charles did prefer to use his hover chair as opposed to using the exoskeleton apparently. I understand, he's probably like mentally exhausted. Our final point is one that's new to me, and I just want to say I'm so glad I found this out so that I could share it with you. Initially, I was going to talk about 90s Doctor Strange on this list. Admittedly, 90s Doctor Strange is a pretty weird look, but this is weirder, honestly. We're talking about 90s Dr. Fate. For some reason, Dr. Fate in this era had a host who decided he was just gonna basically reject Naboo, reject the helm, and he melted it down to make a golden dagger. I'm sorry, what? I didn't even know that was an option. But hey, I guess it is. I guess, you know, you found a loophole. This has to be the edgiest Dr. Fate I have ever seen. And although it looks ridiculous, I am honestly so happy that it exists. Thank you for making my weird costume dreams come true. Number 10, Wolverine's patch disguise. Wolverine's patch disguise. Okay, bub. So you know I'm a big Wolverine fan, and if you follow me elsewhere on the interwebs, you may also know I'm a big patch fan. However, even I, a major fan, can acknowledge how ridiculous this look and disguise is. While the Gambit miniseries we got recently did help to justify Gambit's kind of weird costume choices, the Patch miniseries definitely did not do that. Although that miniseries, written by Wolverine writing legend Larry Hama, which takes us back in time for an untold tale from the Patch era, is still amazing, and you should definitely check it out. The funny thing is how even in the comics, the other characters who interact with Patch and Madripoor eventually fess up to the fact that they pretty much always knew Patch was Wolverine, admitting that his attempt at a disguise is as ridiculous and dumb as we all thought it was. Still, I do love the Patch look, so this is more me pointing out how silly it is, as opposed to dumb in like a bad way. This is actually a lovably dumb superhero suit, I would say. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9, Superman Red and Blue. Admittedly, these designs are actually kind of really cool, but it's more the power sets that come with them and how they attempted to, in essence, reset Superman with these looks that makes them kind of dumb. Although I do admire DC for wanting to change up the design and the character, which honestly was a revolutionary choice. The fact remains that this is comics, and returning to a status quo, especially for a character as old and as respected as Supes, is kinda necessary, which is why this didn't really work and a lot of people didn't really like it. Number 8, Swordsman. I don't know about you, but I personally find Jacques Duquesne's look a little silly. Like, what is happening with that helmet? Is that a helmet? It's not, right? Because it's like attached to his whole outfit, which is also really weird. What's happening there? Also, I don't mind the tunic and the tights, but the weird pink and purple color combination here is interesting for color choices. At least that's how I see the colors. I don't know if you guys see pink and purple, but that's what I'm seeing here. And the fact that while he has gloves on to protect his hands, he has nothing to cover his arms, except for, I guess, those armbands. What are the armbands for? Are they supposed to protect him, or are they like just for adornment? The thing I love about the modern look for the Kotati version of this character by comparison to the original human swordsman who first appeared in Marvel Comics back in the 60s is that at least this plant version, while still not having full sleeves, had the improved design of wearing bracers. Honestly, I think that makes more sense for a master swordsman rather than gloves and armbands. And also, just for context, I was talking about the original swordsman design there, so. Number 7, Azrael's Batman. As per Saya Dubray's suggestion from the comments on part 1 of this list, I had to include Jean-Paul Valley's Batman outfit here. You're completely right, Saya. It is one of the most 90s outfits around. And while I am a big fan of dumb 90s outfits, that doesn't make them any less dumb. It just means that I love things that are dumb, which is I think fine. And this outfit is definitely included in the list of dumb 90s outfits for sure. From the weird cape collar to the metal accents and back again to the insane amount of muscle definition that we can see through what must be the tightest fitting outfit ever. Also, metal garters. I mean, having a metal garter on your leg, I imagine that has to be uncomfortable. Number 6. Wolverine's no nose. Wolverine's nose is not really a suit at all, but it is a whole look that Wolverine had for a time that was bizarre, and I thought, hey, if Tony's iron nose can make the cut on AJ's part 1, it's important that I also include Wolverine's nose on part 2 here. While Iron Man having a nose added to his suit was weird for the character, Wolverine had the opposite problem of completely losing his nose, which was also weird for the character. However, at least this was more of a stylistic choice inspired by the story than, you know, an arbitrary change to the design based on where Iron Man's eyes are. So I will at least say that in the defense of this pretty strange look for the character. It came as a result of Wolverine having the adamantium coating ripped from his bones by Magneto, which also turned him feral. For a few years he'd become more bestial in nature than he normally was, which apparently also meant his nose, I guess, had to go, becoming more of a flat central spot on his face with 2 nostrils, kind of like became pushed into his face almost. I mean, honestly, this version of Wolverine almost becomes unrecognizable when you take the nose off. Number 5. Smallville's Aquaman. Whether we're talking sleeves or no sleeves, second generation or first generation, the Aquaman look for Smallville was pretty ridiculous and honestly kinda dumb in a bad way. While I typically try to approach dumb lists with less of that kind of outlook because, you know, dumb doesn't always have to mean bad, and it definitely doesn't usually mean bad for me, this costume in my opinion is actually pretty atrocious. I honestly, I don't really like this one. Honestly, I think I'd rather have the Golden Age look with the weird fins on his arms and his legs over this one. It just looks like a weird jogging outfit to me, and I know it's probably supposed to be like a wetsuit, but no, just let's pretend it didn't happen. Except we can't because it's on this list, so now we all have to remember it. Number 4. The Crossing Thor. I mean, everyone in The Crossing looked pretty wild, but Thor is definitely up there for me personally. The Crossing is the event where we learned that this whole time Iron Man had been basically a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate timeline version of Kang the Conqueror. The whole time! Dun dun dun! In honor of this very important and historical time, Thor and many of the other Avengers ended up with kind of new looks. Now, Thor's costume was definitely the most 90s look I think I've ever seen. The only thing it's missing really for me is pouches, honestly. What it lacks in pouches though, it makes up for with everything else in abundance. Tons of chains and elaborate excessive harnesses, and one of those weird like face masks that covers part of your face, like the sides and the top, but leaves a hole on the top of it for your hair to come out. And of course, I believe this was actually supposed to be what future Thor was meant to look like in this comic, in like another timeline, despite this look truly screaming 90s. In the story, this appeared to be a vision that we got of what a future Thor would look like. Now, thank goodness that hasn't ended up happening in this current timeline, at least not yet anyways. I don't know, that might still be somewhere lurking. Number 3. Star Sapphire. When it comes to Star Sapphire, Carol Ferris, she isn't always a hero and she isn't always a villain either. She's kind of done both of those things. She served both roles, but either way, she usually does so pretty ridiculously dressed, I gotta be honest. I mean, not always. She's had some reasonable costume designs and some that I've liked, but for this point, I'm focusing on her one-piece bathing suit-like costume with the middle of it cut out to the point that it becomes theoretically, structurally unsound, I'd say. For the record, I don't mind a woman who shows off her body. In fact, you know, I too enjoy that, both as a woman and both as someone looking at women, especially when it comes from a place of empowerment. I don't really mind anyone showing off their body as long as they're the ones making that choice for themselves, and it makes sense. Truly, doing so can not only be a good showcase of confidence, but also of self-love and self-celebration, and that's hot to me. But this costume is just objectively ridiculous, because how does it stay on? I mean, I know that it's, you know, probably like a construct, likely created by Carol, so we can explain it away with what is basically like kind of cosmic magic. But imagine cosplaying this look. Imagine it. Just imagine you wearing this costume, and how does that work? Without added invisible straps or literal glue or tape, it becomes impossible. And for that reason, I have to call it dumb, because logically, in our world at least, where sadly there are no green or violet lanterns, it simply doesn't work as it appears. Also, I have only ever seen people successfully cosplay this look with invisible straps. Glue would likely damage your outfit, and honestly, it's really hard on your skin, I know, because I've worn it under costumes before, and tape would probably sweat off unless it was really cold out. And I know because I'm not a super sweaty person, and I've also worn tape before and experienced that, which which, you know, if you have to wear it in the cold too, you'd be really cold in this look. So really the only option is invisible straps, which clearly Carol doesn't need somehow in the comics, as she's never drawn with them. Unless maybe she is, but they're invisible so we don't see them. Even invisible straps, you usually see them, so just makes no sense. Number 2, the crossing wasp. I don't just want to talk about the crossing here, folks, but as ridiculous as Thor's look is, Wasp is possibly even more wild. Now, she kind of had 2 looks as well. The one she wore at the beginning, which is kind of like a metallic bodysuit that somehow like fits her like spandex, and possibly even has a metal pocket on the legs. I'm not sure. I saw that in one of the panels I was looking at and I was like, wait a minute, does she have like metal cargo pants that are skin tight? It looks like a pocket to me. The second is after she is resurrected in Avengers issue 394 and comes back literally looking like a pink bug woman with bright pink hair and bright pink wings. Number 1, original Peacemaker. I have to say, I really love how dumb this look is, and I love that we managed to somehow keep it in the DCU, almost 1 for 1. The reason why I went with the original version of Peacemaker's costume from his days at Charlton Comics isn't just because of the white pants, which to me are an absurd fashion choice to make when you know you're headed into a fray. Wearing white pants in general for me is like a huge thing. I'm a messy person in my day-to-day, so I can't imagine getting into a fight with white pants on. But the other thing that I really think is strange about this that really gets me is the weird giant helmet. It looks like there's like a thick doorway sitting on top of Peacemaker's head. Number 10, Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie suit. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie costume is definitely an odd one. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one didn't bother me myself too much. There are parts of it I actually kind of like. I actually really like his shoes, but I do know people who pretty passionately felt that this look is ridiculous. And I'm including it because I value the specific person's opinion who actually even mentioned that to me, and I think they made a fair point for why it was so silly, so I'm going to indulge. The Spider-Man we are talking about here is of course Miles Morales, and the look we're talking about is the one he donned before this current look that he's in right now, which is kind of a return to more of his classic look. I like to call this specific look though his hoodie costume, although to be fair that's a little confusing because he has another hoodie costume, but anyways, hoodie 2021. It basically looks like he's wearing a hoodie with leggings and of course sweet kicks. Of course I will say this costume looks super comfy, which for me makes more sense than some of the other things that superheroes are known for wearing, but it also greatly deviates from his normally sleek design, which is I think what was missing for most who weren't fans of this look. While it is a bit goofy looking, especially with the leggings, which I gotta say I kind of agree, kinda wish he had looser pants to kind of match his hoodie, this costume was actually made by one of Miles' friends as a replacement, so at least it also had a reason for existing in the story. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us and you love talking about all the dumb, weird costumes by giving this video a thumbs up. I love dumb costumes. Number 9, Wonder Woman's secretary look. Forget the old. The new Wonder Woman is here, and she is depowered and working as a spy and business owner, baby. The kind of Wonder Woman you probably never really asked to see, but the 70s gave it to us anyways. Admittedly, the actual fashion sense of this look is pretty great, I gotta say. So although in some ways this is kind of dumb, I also feel like the actual fashion, amazing. And I mean all around throughout as well. But the fact that it comes with Diana not having her powers anymore is pretty tragic, which is why it's going to make our cut. Even though this was done in an effort to actually promote feminism at the time. The revamp was actually intended by the creative team behind it to encourage other women to strive for independence, and was actually pretty well executed, I gotta say. Even though taking away Diana's powers would in retrospect be seen as a downgrade for the character in regards to her history. Which is why this makes our cut, even though I understand what they were trying to do was not that, but it unfortunately ended up being seen as a setback as opposed to a move forward for the character. Number 8, Martian Manhunter. This was really the only suggestion I got from the comments on our part 2. People were saying that we never talk about male characters in skimpy outfits and how those are dumb, and Martian Manhunter was one of the ones that was suggested. And I do agree that Martian Manhunter does have a weird outfit, but I also didn't know too much about his outfit and what it means. So I decided to look into it. And as I was expecting, while this outfit does look pretty ridiculous with Martian Manhunter's little shorts and his X-straps over his bare chest with his long flowy cape, it turns out there is actually a reason behind it. So it kinda does make sense. Martian Manhunter being a shapeshifter, it's as I expected, and apparently his clothes are actually just him, because he's a shapeshifter. It's just a weird thing to think about. His suit, therefore, is something he chose to shapeshift into, and it seems to be inspired by the heroes around him. Martian Manhunter in his normal form actually looks more alien even than we know him to look, and is a little bit more spiky. And so his appearance on Earth is actually him trying to stay true to his Martian heritage while still shifting his appearance somewhat to look more humanoid, so he'll be more accepted, and he makes himself look like he's wearing clothes that he feels makes him look heroic, as that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a hero. So if you think Martian Manhunter dresses weird, it's really kind of a reflection of how Martian Manhunter sees most male superhero costumes and just superhero costumes in general, and maybe the way that we see them. In fact, I definitely see inspiration in his look from another alien superhero, Superman. You know, with his green skin and his little booty shorts, which sometimes are like little briefs. It's kind of got a Superman vibe to it a little bit. Number 7, Susan Storm's cutout suit. Oh boy, this is a 90s classic in some of the worst ways, I think I can safely say. Now, I love a woman in a sexy costume, but this one is a lot, even for me. And what's worse, they made it narratively so that Sue designed this one herself, which feels not right for the character, but hey. If that feels pretty out of character for Sue, who refers to feeling like an old frump in her previous suit, you're not alone in thinking that, by the way. Many people like to defend this costume by actually saying that narratively its creation makes sense because it came from her evil persona Malice, actually, who was still possessing and influencing Sue at the time, and that this is actually an indicator of that. Well, this might be true, I'm still skeptical as to this being the real reason outside of the canon for this redesign. And even if that is the only reason she had this suit, I still don't really like it, because as a Sue Storm fan, it doesn't actually come from Sue herself, but from Malice, who was controlling her at the time. Which I know Malice is kind of like a part of her, but it's like the evil part of her, so there's really not as much agency here for Sue. Number 6, Vision. Marvel Comics initially had a completely different character who is known as the hero Vision. This was actually back, I believe, when they were Timely, before they were known as Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics would ultimately, of course, ditch their original version of the character and later get a completely new version, an android instead of an alien, who would end up as the Vision we know and love today. Not only is this original Vision's costume a product of the times, that insanely thick gold belt that he's wearing, but if you consider Martian Manhunter's costume to be ridiculous, Vision likely inspired that look, having a similar origin and a similar appearance initially, and appearing 15 years earlier in the comics in 1940, whereas Martian Manhunter, I believe, first appeared in 1955, so yeah. Number 5, Mangaverse Black Cat. Mangaverse Black Cat has a pretty wild look. To be fair to the universe, this one fits, I would say, in regards to, you know, a manga look, but boy oh boy is it strange when you think of Black Cat's standard look over on Earth 616. I mean, Black Cat has always been a sexy character, as many are in comics, but she doesn't usually have quite a deep v-neck. I'm not sure how exactly this suit also really functions. It must be made of some very firm material or like glued into place for it to stay on. Also missing are the tufts of white fur we're used to seeing Felicia wear, which I actually do miss. I really like those. I still feel like those could have been incorporated in some way in this look, but I guess they wanted to move away from having this version of the character look too similar to her, you know, 616 counterpart, which honestly, fair enough, but still the deep V and the super long claws for me feel pretty weird. Maybe it's just because I'm not as into manga as I used to be, I don't know, but that's where we're at. Number 4, Doctor Strange, a new Sorcerer Supreme. The 90s was a time when many folks got new looks. Some of them were, no, actually almost all of them were pretty terrible. But that's why we love them, right? Steven was not exempt from this. He got one of the most mystical 90s looks after years of having what I would say was a relatively unchanged costume. It didn't change that much, and even today it's kind of got a similar vibe. His costume was tweaked here and there, but usually for the most part it's just been slightly updated. But this was a pretty crazy refresh for him. His hair was even different. This transformation took place in issue number 75 of Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, where Steven revealed himself at the end as the true Doctor Strange. The sunglasses are what really get me with this one, though honestly, kinda wanna cosplay as 90s Strange now. I mean, what a vibe. Also, I love that he comes out and he's like, the sun, I must put on sunglasses. To make sense of why he's wearing sunglasses. Which, I mean, you know, you gotta make sense of that, otherwise how am I supposed to accept as a reader? Number 3, Starfire from Red Hood and the Outlaws. Based on how the comments looked for part 2, I can already feel the animosity surrounding this point just building up. Just for me even mentioning it. I could end the point here and I feel like people would rage. But regardless, I'm gonna dive into my perspective of this one anyways, because, well, I mean, that's what I'm here to do, so that's what we're gonna do. Talking about costumes that I think are somewhat dumb, and so we're gonna get into that. As I've said before though, and I will say again, dumb to me doesn't always mean bad. It can mean illogical, silly, or contradictory. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. I love a lot of bad costumes myself, so they're not bad, they're just, I don't know, on paper good. Does that make sense? Well, I don't actually mind the design. I do think this look for Starfire was a bit much. I do think Starfire makes sense wearing less based on her energy absorption abilities. However, that being said, her first costume was basically just like a one-piece swimsuit with some cutouts. This is like not even a bikini level of coverage. It's like a bikini bottoms with cutouts with like a collar, shoulder thing, and pasties. And I mean, it's definitely an homage to that original look, but they undressed it even more for like really no reason. Add in the fact that Starfire was also an amnesiac at the beginning of this run, and I feel like we could have done better by Corey here. It would actually be less ridiculous to me if Corey was the one to have chosen this with all her memories attached. Then it would actually have some agency. This was kind of just a weird time in general for her character. Also, because it bears repeating, apparently, I am not critiquing the outfit because it is sexy. It's more the issue of how extreme it is and what was going on for Starfire in the story when she wore this look. I like sexy costumes. I like characters who wear sexy costumes. That's all fine with me. Number 2, Superman's t-shirt and jeans look. I mean, what even is this look? I understand wanting to modernize your character's appearance and give them something totally different, but a t-shirt and jeans just seems a little too low-key. And I know it had a narrative explanation, but still, it's pretty ridiculous. This is the outfit Superman wore when he drove around the US on a motorbike. He couldn't fly at the time, and what a time it was. I will say though, this one would be really easy to cosplay at least, so it gets some points for that, because I mean, anyone could do this look. I could do this look. I could be this Superman. Number 1, Red Sonja's chainmail bikini. Now of course, I have cosplayed as Red Sonja, but even I can admit that her outfit is pretty ridiculous. And I say this with much love for this outfit. The whole point of wearing chainmail is to protect you, so wearing it in a bikini form, it doesn't really make any sense. The only thing I can say about this that kind of makes sense is Red Sonja really doesn't care what other people think of her, so I could see her wearing a chainmail bikini because you just didn't care, but it's not good armor, you know what I mean? And sure, it's an iconic look that I will happily wear any day of the week, well, as long as I'm feeling like wearing a chainmail bikini, but that doesn't change how goofy it is, as is evident by many of those who write and draw her, changing up what she wears inside the comics while kind of saving that iconic look more for either a single moment in a story or just for the cover. So I feel like even creative teams acknowledge this.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Valkyrie from the Ultimate Comics. Valkyrie is an incredibly capable warrior and is probably one of the strongest members of the Ultimates, but she wasn't always that way. Initially, Barbara Norris was just a 19-year-old girl with no actual powers who was obsessed with superheroes, specifically Thor. She did have some novice level martial arts skills though, and she used those as a member of the Ultimate Universe's Defenders, who were really just wannabe superheroes. They went off pretending to be superheroes for clout, essentially, until Loki gave them all real powers. She then eventually joined the Ultimates, but all the while she was claiming to be an incredibly capable warrior, she was suited up to go tanning, basically. Valkyrie initially was pretty scantily clad for most of her appearances. Later on, after working with the Ultimates for a bit longer and having some real training with real Asgardians, she would begin to armor up to bring her more in keeping with someone who is actually engaging in armed combat on the daily. But for a good chunk of time, she was jumping into battle extremely unprepared. Maybe coming back from the afterlife taught her armor was kind of useful, but I think the change in her costume could actually also kind of show her character's growth in a weird kind of way.
And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about ridiculous suits that people wear, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Death's Head. Death's Head is a character more prominently featured in Marvel UK, who honestly looks like he just stepped out of Reboot to me. Or rather, Reboot's Megabyte looks like he may have taken a page out of Death's Head's book when it comes to his look. I should say, since Reboot actually came out after Death's Head first appeared and was created over at Marvel Comics UK. And while I do think Death's Head's look is very extreme and exaggerated, which is why he is going to make my cut here, I will say it does kind of make sense when you learn that he first made his appearance in Transformers issue 113. I mean, he does kind of have that extreme Transformers look. But Death's Head himself is not actually a Transformer. He's a robotic bounty hunter actually, although he prefers being called like basically a peacekeeper. But you know, bounty hunter, peacekeeper, I guess those terms are interchangeable. But while you might be wondering if he can even make the cut as a hero, yeah, he pretty much does. He's basically like a bounty hunter with a moral code, sorry, a peacekeeping person with a moral code. So walking the line of being a hero, I'd say. Although I'm kind of now wondering if he fits the suit criteria, as his suit is really his body, but I'm gonna count it because, you know, many robots, they don't really wear suits, so it's weird to think about, but you know, many robots are kind of just walking around like kinda naked.
Number 8. Armored Daredevil. Matt Murdock has been through a lot of redesigns. As one of the most popular Marvel heroes, that does make sense. His first initial change from yellow to fully red stuck through basically until the modern day, but in between then and now, Marvel still flirted with several other ideas. After getting a pretty brutal beatdown at the hands of the Wild Pack, Daredevil decided that maybe a little armor would be a good choice. He faked his own passing as Matt and then designed himself a new red and black suit with prominent silver plating on his shoulders, knees, and up the sides of his legs for extra protection. Now, if I'm honest, I think this suit that first appeared in Daredevil number 321 in 1993 actually looks pretty cool. Maybe I'm weird, but something about it just feels like yes. I will admit, for a character who's pretty dependent on stealth though, it may not make the most sense, and it was rather flashy, but he still used it for a decent chunk of time, and I'm sure the extra protection came in handy a few times when he used it to fight villains like Hellspawn. Thank God he went back to just the red though. That's the classic, and I like that.
Number 7. Professor X and his Shi'ar exosuit. Professor X's Shi'ar exosuit, oh my. So this is one I personally find to be kind of silly, more because of my own headcanon to be honest, so go with me here. I don't know why this manifested for me, but when I was looking back on that fight against Magneto where Wolverine gets the adamantium ripped from his bones and Professor X as a result shuts down Magneto's brain basically, I saw this suit and I couldn't stop seeing it, and it lives still in my memory and in my heart every time I think of Professor X, really. And maybe because it's a 90s comic look, maybe because of how bulky it kind of looks to me, I don't know, but I just imagined it as being like a slow moving clunky suit that like allows Charles to walk but also doesn't save much time. Like he's walking like this, like he's like I don't know why I imagine that, but that's what I do. Also, the idea of Charles possibly wearing something made of metal to go up against Magneto in a fight, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Although apparently this suit is like somehow like telepathically fueled, which I don't know, must be a Shi'ar thing. However, this never came up in the fight, the fact that his suit is maybe made of metal. I still don't really know for sure what this exosuit is made out of. At the end of the day, Charles technically won against Magnus, so maybe he knew something I don't know about this suit. Or maybe it's like metal, but like, I don't know, it's protected from certain abilities because it's made by the Shi'ar. It looks like metal. I don't know.
Number 6. The nipple suit. Batman relies heavily on his tech. His bat suit is probably the most important of that tech. It's highly advanced in terms of super suits, and it's constantly being improved and added to. Sometimes it gets a tech overhaul to battle a villain, like the zebra suit. Sometimes it will get a redesign to better personify where Bruce is at in his life. Kinda like the Zur-En-Arrh suit. But of all the suits donned by Bruce Wayne, one stands above the rest. And all it took was the addition of a pair of nipples. In both Batman Forever from 1995 and Batman and Robin from 1997, the director, Joel Schumacher, decided that he wanted his heroes to emulate human perfection, and so he was inspired by statues of Greek gods and heroes. This is why both of his bat suits worn by Val Kilmer and George Clooney have a shiny, muscle-adorned physique and, of course, nipples. It's really a very small detail, and if it wasn't for a close-up shot of just the chest and its extremely prevalent nipples, I might not have even noticed. But when you realize they are there, you realize that no other superhero has nipples built into their costume. This one is just iconic.
Number 5. Nightwing, red suit. Oh boy, the New 52 was a time of reinvention for a lot of characters, but then, on the other hand, it was also a time of radical change for pretty much, in most cases, really no reason. Which is kind of what happened to poor Nightwing here, because the New 52 was supposed to be giving us fresh new takes on characters. DC decided to completely revamp his look by going from his classic blue to red, which really seemed to serve no purpose that I can see myself, other than to be a very different color than the one we're used to seeing Dick wear as Nightwing, because well, I mean, it's very different. I mean, red has always been more of Jason's, or I would say even maybe Damian's color in my mind when it comes to former and current Robins, and even after donning this new suit, it was almost immediately discarded as Dick Grayson's secret identity was revealed, prompting him to change his hero name from Nightwing to just Grayson, and ditching the suit as well with all that change. So really, what even was the point of this?
Number 4. Black Condor. When Black Condor first popped up on the scene in DC Comics, his choice of garb was interesting. Richard Grey Jr. gained the power of flight from being exposed to a radioactive meteor, though he believed he had developed flight naturally after being raised by a flock of wild condors. Yes, really. So clearly there is a level of, how should we say this, creativity here. Like, he came back into society and then took someone else's identity while also being a costumed hero, and I think his superhero costume perfectly exemplifies how utterly off the rocker this guy actually is. Richard took to wearing a cape that draped out under each arm, being attached to his wrists with bracelets giving the semblance of wings, because he can fly. Get it? I'm sure that could probably have had some kind of effect on his flying, but the rest of the getup is kind of a mystery. Essentially, he wears a neck collar thing that looks kind of like a hood that connects to his big chunky belt with one piece of fabric in the front, and he accompanies that with some short shorts and some really ornate looking boots. Those are really cool. And that's kind of it. Luckily, later iterations of the character took their look in some much more cooler directions, but at first it was kind of weird.
Number 3. Emma Frost in Humans vs. X-Men. Emma Frost's look following Inhumans vs. X-Men is something that I think is dumb, because I kind of think what happened to her character in that story was kind of dumb. Although, as someone who really enjoys Emma and enjoys her, in more of a hero role, it makes sense that I would feel that way. People who might be more fans of Emma in a villain role may have actually kind of liked what happened with her character in this story, and honestly, if you like it, that's fine. But I think either way, we can all agree, regardless of what this costume represents for the character, that it is objectively a pretty terrible costume. It honestly makes me think of what Emma cosplaying as Penance might look like. This mainly black look was one Emma donned near the end of Inhumans vs. X-Men, after it was revealed that Emma had, basically been manipulating the X-Men and mutant kind into fighting against the Inhumans. It also featured a combo Cyclops and Magneto style helmet that also kind of reminds me of Professor X's Krakoan era Cerebro helmet look. While the helmet may work on those other characters, it just doesn't really work for me with Emma. I just feel like a helmet for her is a weird choice.
Coming in at number 2, it's Catwoman. The history of Catwoman's look is a long and honestly incredibly kind of odd story. Over time, she would go through a number of looks until it eventually became a leather suit which had a more practical vibe, matched with a pair of cat eyes goggles, and it became the character's most popular costume, with later redesigns all primarily retaining the key elements of that suit. But in the very beginning, Selina Kyle was just a woman in a green dress that was also a thief. That kind of checks out for the comics at the time, and it also felt kind of unique in my opinion. Compared to all the other zany villains, she kept it rather low key, but that wouldn't last. Eventually, in 1940's Batman number 3, Selina Kyle donned an orange costume with a cape with the super great addition of a terrifying full cat face mask. This was basically like a mascot's headpiece, but a bit smaller, which I'm sure made it more practical, but for me, it's utter nightmare fuel. I don't know what it is about animal heads on human bodies, but I am not here for it. Basically, she kept the dress element that she started with, but now, it was orange, with an incredibly high popped up collar, and it was combined with a huge reddish orange cape and tiny little blue heels for added comfort. Then she topped it all off with a terrifying full headpiece, and now I have to watch videos of puppies before I go to sleep at night. Thanks a lot.
Number 1, the real Lobo from New 52. The real Lobo, oh boy. New Lobo, who dis? Although there have been quite a few New 52 redesigns that I've discussed on this series of lists where we talk about dumb costumes, Lobo probably takes the cake here. The whole new look he had when he was revealed as the real Lobo in the New 52, the first version to appear was initially said by this Prime Earth Lobo to have been an imposter, was so different from the original and so serious that it completely ruined the character for a lot of people. I will say I do think this design is objectively pretty cool. Like, I think this character looks great, but it's not Lobo. This doesn't No, just not for Lobo. For Lobo, this is objectively ridiculous.
At number 10, we have the Rainbow Batman suit from Detective Comics number 241. This is the suit where we get to see Bruce Wayne's fashionista persona as he gets to fight crime in all sorts of different colored suits, from green to purple to yellow to white to red, which on the cover looks more like a neon pink to me. And of course, rainbow. Now, you might wonder why the Dark Knight would want to wear all these costumes, but as always when it comes to Batman, the explanation is purely logical and slightly convoluted. See, the Bat Diva did this in order to draw attention towards himself and away from Robin, who earlier had performed a heroic act as Dick Grayson, pushing a girl out of the way of a speeding car and injuring his arm in the process. And since Batman don't believe in work from home culture, and to his credit it is the 50s, he takes the money he would have spent on Robin's paid leave and cops himself some new fancy outfits so that no one would pay attention to Robin's arm and realize his secret identity. If you're enjoying the video so far, do me a quick solid and support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Goes a long way, thanks guys. At number 9, we have Raven's New 52 redesign from Teen Titans number 17. Raven's original cloak is simple, elegant, and iconic, and so to recapitulate that essence for the New 52, they took all that and put it in the garbage and just went, Raven? Needs feathers. Listen, I know she's supposed to be gloomy and mysterious and whatnot, but covering her face completely is stupid, and what they covered it with looks ridiculous. Not to mention the whole bird theme as a whole is severely uninspired. And also the knee pads. Why does she need freaking knee pads? Heck, if you're gonna take it that far, you might as well throw in some elbow pads, shin guards, and a jock strap for good measure. Morons. At number 8, we have Cyborg Spider-Man from Spider-Man number 21. This is probably the most 90s Spider-Man costume out there, though I wouldn't be surprised if one of you guys in the comments proved me wrong. Solo nearly ended Spider-Man, believing him to be Doc Ock thanks to an illusion cast onto him by Mysterio. But Peter was rescued in the nick of time by Cyborg X, who took him to Care Labs to get fixed up, where he would awake with a new metal cast, an eyepiece, and some stitches. He was even gifted a utility belt, though Spidey never puts this one to use. And while the original version of the Cyborg suit is disbanded fairly quickly, probably on account of it being so hard to look at, it's worth mentioning that a Pete from a different timeline decided to go all in with the cybernetic enhancements, leading to a truly cyborg Spider-Man whose costume is seriously done right. We're even gonna get a fresh take of the character on screen in the next Spider-Verse movie with Cyborg Spider-Woman, and I'm all about it. Well, save for the spiky shoulder guard. Personally, I feel it's a little bit out of place, but maybe we'll get a good enough explanation for it in the movie, but probably not. At number 7, we have the Superman Unchained armor from Superman Unchained number 7. Okay, look, we can all agree that the Unchained armor is undoubtedly badass looking. That's not my point here. My gripe is the fact that Superman's wearing it. You see, Kal dons the armor when he realizes that he's vulnerable to attack from the weapons wielded by General Lane's army. And the suit, which comes with a hammer and shield, is able to withstand a few blows that supposedly would have one-shot the Man of Steel. Okay then, so why does he need a shield? He is Superman after all. It's not like he needs anything other than his fists for combat. Or better yet, why doesn't he just ditch the suit altogether and just keep the shield, as it proves to be far more effective at sponging blows from Lane's weapons than the armor is. And don't even get me started on the hammer, which is literally only there to rip off Mjolnir. Not to mention how uncharacteristic and lazy it is of Superman just to put on thicker armor when a greater threat presents itself. Because it would have been much more satisfying to see Superman outwit his opponent instead of just out-tanking him. Like, okay, DC, listen up. Maybe you can use this design for some sort of Thor, Darth Maul, Megazord hybrid character, but Superman, guy doesn't need it. Give it to someone else. At number 6, we have Iron Man's nose from Iron Man number 68. There's change in the air. I can smell it. One of the most iconic examples of a redesign gone wrong, we have that period of time where Tony Stark thought it would be a good idea to include a nose in his mask to make him look more expressive and help strike fear into the heart of his enemies. Buddy, the only thing you're striking me with is an intense desire to laugh in your face, because let's face it, the addition of a big metal nose ain't exactly intimidating. Now you might be wondering why Marvel would even give him a nose in the first place. Well, the story goes that one day Stan Lee was complaining about one of the studio's new artists. See, Stan thought that Tony's eyes were too close to the surface of the helmet for there to be any room for a nose underneath the mask, and so Stan asked, where's his nose? The editors took this to mean that Iron Man should have a nose, and so they gave him one. That is, until Stan caught wind of the change a few issues later and demanded that the editors change it back. At number 5, we have Hawkeye's tunic in Avengers number 72. Good lord, dude! Pants! Not only is Hawkeye one of the bravest Avengers on account of him being super powerless, but to stand shoulder to shoulder with Earth's mightiest heroes in what's effectively a dress is a whole new level of courage. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath. Not to mention that this was right after some very questionable decisions that led to Hank Pym turning Hawkeye into the size-changing Goliath, who sports an equally decisive costume, that one including those redundant bolted shoulder and waist straps. Sorry to say, buddy, but this fit just makes you look arrogant. Arrogant? No? Okay, I tried. At number 4, we have Captain America's exoskeleton, debuting in Captain America number 438. On yet another edition of Why Does This Hero Need a Whole Suit of Armor, we have Captain America. And while his excuse is a little better than Superman's, it's still pretty lame. You see, Steve Rogers became completely paralyzed by an illness brought on by the very super soldier serum that granted him his superpowers in the first place. And so in order to allow Cap to continue his crime-fighting career, Tony Stark fashioned him this exoskeleton. And after getting some implants that would enable him to operate it, Cap was back in action. Now, I've included this one on the list because the whole concept is a bit ridiculous. I mean, super soldier serum induced paralysis just makes the serum itself completely redundant. Like, if you wanted to give Cap an Iron Man suit, just give Cap an Iron Man suit and do away with the whole degenerative disease nonsense. I mean, Spidey got an Iron Man suit, more than one, and he didn't need to get paralyzed to earn it. At number 3, we have Plaid Daredevil. Okay, this next one is seriously cruel, and if you laugh, your soul is going straight to Mephisto. This panel comes from What If Volume 2 number 17, the comic that asks, what if Daredevil had a dishonest tailor? To which Kingpin and Punisher are seen laughing in his face. See, I think this is dumb not because of the plaid, although it is pretty ugly, but because it's uncharacteristic. You see, Daredevil wouldn't have gotten ripped off. He can't. He can literally smell fear and dishonesty. It's what makes him such a good lawyer. So either this universe's Daredevil is missing one of his most crucial hypersenses, or he's Canadian. Either way, it's nothing to laugh about. At number 2, we have Hulk, the Horseman of War from Incredible Hulk number 456. That's right, not only has Hulk been a villain, an Avenger, a space gladiator, and the conqueror of entire planets, but now we can add first non-mutant war horseman of the apocalypse to his resume as well. His armor, made from celestial tech, allows him to accomplish feats of strength with ease, which the irregular Hulk would probably find at least a little strenuous, like picking up and tossing an entire Egyptian pyramid, for instance. His helmet also has the added bonus of calming his inner demons, allowing the Hulk to become more cold and calculated. And if I'm being honest with you guys, the real reason I included this costume on the list is because it makes Hulk look like a jacked version of Marvin the Martian. Am I the only one who's made this connection? Can't be. And at number 1, we have Mangaverse's Black Panther, who made his very first in-costume appearance in Marvel Mangaverse Eternity Twilight. The Marvel Mangaverse has plenty of questionable redesigns. I'm looking at you, Spider-Gloves. But when it comes to the King of Wakanda, boy oh boy did they do him dirty. See, instead of utilizing the vibranium of his homeland to build himself a super suit, T'Challa of Earth 2301 seems to have replaced his sacred herb powers with the spirit of Kwamatha, transforming him into a furry. As if things weren't furry enough with Tigra around, who, after watching T'Challa transform, immediately gets the heart-shaped eyes for him anime style. Okay, look, maybe I wouldn't have so much hate for the suit if there was a suit to begin with, as the king's suggestively shaped loincloth leaves very little to the imagination, and the bat ears. Ugh, why is he the only anthropomorph with hyper-realistic ears?
Kicking off the list at number 10, Bullseye, Daredevil. Wow, he's the coolest guy I've ever seen at a bar, hands down. So Bullseye was introduced to readers back in Daredevil 131. Now, I know he doesn't look the coolest here either, but that's who the character is, okay? Make your movie universe work for that character, or just don't use the character yet. That's it. Like, you can't have Daredevil looking like this, and then when it comes to Bullseye, you have him looking like this. You can't have cool guy Colin Farrell and also leather Daredevil. It's just like, pick a lane. It looks like he's the villain of a 90s TV show, honestly. He doesn't look like the iconic evil assassin at all in this entire movie. Plus, Colin Farrell's performance is just Now the Batman universe did Ben Affleck a little bit better, and now we can also look forward to Colin Farrell being in the Penguin in the new Batman. So it's good. It's like you start with Marvel, move to DC, or you start to DC and then you move to Marvel. Proper transitions. And before we head over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, because it really means a lot for us at the channel, and it also helps us out as well too. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for supporting. Now back to this list. Number 9, Silver Samurai, the Wolverine. Alrighty, we got a cinematic masterpiece coming from Fox, because they just pump out the best superhero movies ever. The Silver Samurai in this movie has no mutant abilities. It's rather just an advanced tech suit. It was made up of adamantium from the orders of Ikiro Yoshida, and it was meant to prolong his life until he got Logan's healing factor. And it also looks like a Decepticon. Although it's based off of the original armor of the Silver Samurai, it just didn't work out. It was too much CGI, took you out of the movie, felt like you were watching Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles. It was just a mess. But while this Wolverine movie may be at the bottom of the list for many, I don't feel too bad for adding it in here, because eventually we got around to James Mangold's Logan, which was a perfect send-off for the character. So far, there's only a couple of Fox characters that have been redeemed: Wolverine and some other mutant that I'm going to mention definitely later on in this list. Number 8, Vision, Avengers Age of Ultron. So with WandaVision episodes dropping weekly, we're getting to see Marvel have another crack at suiting up their power couple. We've seen a sneak peek now for their original comic book look that's going to come up in a future episode. Okay, cool, that's going to be amazing. So now it's only fair to revisit Marvel's first attempt at Vision. Age of Ultron was released in 2015, and comic book fans were delighted to see the creation of Vision in this movie. But unfortunately, it looked like another CGI android and not anything close to what made him pop and unique in the comics. So while some characters like Hawkeye have to look more military based because that's part of this arc for this universe that they're building all these stories in, he's more of a military character. It would make sense that he doesn't jump right into the purple onesie off the bat. But Vision could have looked anyway. He didn't have to be as grounded and realistic as Hawkeye did in the story. They could have had way more fun with him, which is something WandaVision is finally doing now. And even the solo Hawkeye show that's coming to Disney Plus is kind of leaning into more fun costume-wise. So we can look forward to seeing that in the future. See, things get better for Marvel. They start off a little bit choppy, and then they're like, oh, let's throw in some purple. Let's throw in some green. Number 7, the Rhino, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, the Spider-Man almost trilogy with Andrew Garfield. Here we go. So we got to see the introduction to Rhino, played by Paul Giamatti, which is a wild sentence to say out loud. So the popular villain made his debut in Amazing Spider-Man issue 41 back in 1966, and fans were pumped to see this movie possibly lead us to a Sinister Six movie, and it was coming. So this strange gentleman throughout the movie who is assembling this sinister crew asked Alexei to pilot this exosuit. Now at the beginning of this movie, we had seen him trying to hijack an Oscorp van containing vials of plutonium. Now of course this was Spidey's cool first fight scene of the movie, so he took him down with ease, throwing in left hooks and quips, eventually leaving him literally standing there with his pants down. And then at the end of this film, because you know he's only in the opening scene and the ending scene forever, that's all the Rhino we have now until they redo him again, but they're not going to bring him back for sure. This is a hard character to do, and it didn't really work out in this movie in any way. Yeah, like imagine if he joined Jamie Foxx's Electro coming into the MCU in the next Spider-Man movie. Like if he appeared there, he'd get his ass kicked. Like Mark 1 could take this guy. Now I understand you need to make it again more realistic for a live action movie, but this just wasn't it. Number 6, Apocalypse. X-Men Apocalypse. He made his first full comic book appearance in X-Factor issue 5. He's the big brooding villain of the Marvel Universe, or one of them at least. And after the success of X-Men Days of Future Past, this movie was hyped up. The first mutant, near omnipotent superpowers, this guy is the big bad we've been waiting for in the X-Men universe. And the results were boring dialogue. The costume ended up looking like the sticky dude from Power Rangers movie. Ivan Ooze. Yeah, Ivan Ooze was the villain. Hi, can I get 4 tickets to X-Men Ivan Ooze? Thanks, debit. To be honest, I'd rather just watch Oscar Isaac act as a person, because it's usually pretty good. Ex Machina was an amazing performance. This movie just felt like a superhero movie with a budget every time I looked at him. And also, the guy's barely in the movie. Like, for the main villain, for Apocalypse in a live-action X-Men film, we got to see him for less than 20 minutes. In total. Number 5, The Thing. Fantastic Four. 2015, very important number. The Fantastic Four movies are on here more than once, and for good reason. Okay, so we head over now to the reboot that didn't do well at all. It was directed by Josh Trank, released in 2015, and is currently sitting at a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Also, the other Fantastic Four movies before this reboot didn't get the best of reviews. I mean, sure, they were made long before the MCU was established, so there's not much to compare, but they were fun at the time. I mean, I think I remember having a good time in theaters. I don't remember having a bad time in theaters like I did with this Fantastic Four movie. But with John Watts attached to take a swing at the franchise yet again, we have a little bit of hope. He brought Spider-Man back to life and did such a good job. So as soon as he announced that he was doing Fantastic Four, I think we're good. I think we're finally past the uglies and now we're gonna get into the goods. But let's look now at one of the many things that made this movie bomb. And for me, it was character design. It didn't work. It didn't pull me in at all. I didn't care about any of these characters. I didn't care about the Fantastic Four. That's insane. Like the Thing, he's a super rock monster with a literal heart of gold. His first appearance is fun. He's a fun major character. Keyword here is fun. In 2011, The Thing ranked 18th in the top 100 comic book heroes, and we still haven't really seen any movie do him justice properly. For starters, at least the version that Michael Chiklis played had an actual actor under the suit. We had an actual human to relate to in some way or another. Number 4, Dr. Doom, Fantastic Four 2015. And now we got number 4, same movie. Let's do it. While we're at it, I gotta bring up Dr. Doom from the same movie. Perhaps even worse than how bad The Thing looked, we have our main villain. Also, one of the biggest Marvel villains ever of all time. Victor Von Doom was played by Toby Kebbell, who I'm a big fan of. His motion capture work for the Planet of the Apes movies were amazing. He's a fantastic actor. So dare I say, I was looking forward to seeing this movie in theaters. In the early 2000s franchise, we almost got him. We almost got Dr. Doom. We kind of got a comic book look and feel. A little bit. But even so, this was a watered down version of the character as a whole. Like, he's not a king yet. And the reboot back in 2015, when the first look of Dr. Doom was leaked, we couldn't even believe it. We thought it was fake. We were confused and kind of worried, but then, you know, maybe a little CGI will kind of clean him up a bit, maybe some post-production. Maybe we'll have a good Dr. Doom, right? Right? We'll get him next time, boys. Number 3, Venom, Spider-Man 3. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies have a special place in my soul, in my heart. They're a big part of my childhood. I remember seeing Spider-Man 2 in theaters, and I remember having the best time. It rocked my world. And then the third one came out. So we got to see Venom come to life in the form of Topher Grace. This movie also just had a villain problem to begin with, not necessarily just Venom. We got a new Goblin, Harry Osborn, Flint Marko as the Sandman, and Eddie Brock as Venom. On paper, this sounds like a great Spider-Man sequel. Sounds like a lot of fun, but it wasn't. Why is that? Well, part of the problem was that the studio was pushing director Sam Raimi to include Venom in the plot, when even he didn't want to. He wanted to complete Harry's arc, boom, which he did, and he wanted to have a new wild villain that makes a blockbuster pop like Sandman, and then he originally wanted to have the Vulture in there as well as a third villain. He said Venom's lack of humanity wouldn't work with the existing story and universe. Yeah, absolutely. Venom looks bad in this movie. He just looks like Topher Grace in a suit with messed up teeth. It doesn't feel remotely close to being a powerful symbiote, and also because Raimi had to throw Venom in the plot, we also had to see a new look for Spider-Man, which was the black suit, which was cool. The black suit's a nice little nod to the old comics. It's cool, it makes him stronger. He likes the suit, it feels good on him. Awesome, we love to see it. But that meant we also got to see a new Peter Parker as well, which we didn't want to see. So including Venom was a fail for a good amount of reasons in this movie, not just the look.
I like being bad. It makes me happy.
Number 2, Galactus. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Okay, everybody heads up. We have a giant menacing space cloud coming in, and it's gonna kill all of us, so hit the deck. Galactus made his first comic book appearance in Fantastic Four issue 48 back in the 60s. He's referred to in this issue as the ultimate danger, and his looks match the description. He's the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse, and he was also the bad guy slash bad cloud slash thing that was coming in Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. We're used to seeing this guy as a giant powerful cosmic being, but his big reveal in this movie was not there at all. All we got was a little sneak peek at his silhouette. But why did this happen? Why did they choose to do a giant Nimbus cloud instead of a villain? Let me explain. So 20th Century Fox, their rationale for having the character as a cloud was apparently to keep him discreet, because they had original plans for him, and that was in a Silver Surfer spin-off. So they wanted that to be a tease, and then furthermore explore his true look and story in the movie. So they wanted to kind of tease him first and then bring him in to the actual Silver Surfer spin-off, which would have been great, but we never got that. And finally, number 1, Deadpool. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Okay, possibly the worst cinematic debut of Wade Wilson. And we got 2 looks in that movie that nobody wanted. 2 for the price of 1. We got this one. And we also got This one.
Wait, is that you? Your striker finally figured out how to shut you up.
Both were not received well. Now we're finally back on track with Wade Wilson. Just like Logan, we got that R-rated comic book character we should have always gotten. The merc with the mouth, and your plan was to sew his mouth shut. Okay, great plan. So he went from holding katanas wearing a red and black outfit to having blades in his arm while being naked. And what didn't help was the fight scene that followed this horrible reintroduction. Thank God they're trying again with these characters, but I mean, how many tickets do we have to buy to see your failed attempts?